kuti nai mangwana zuva kudai tina Jesu zuva kudai tina.
My name is Vongai. I'm the CEO and founder of the Alliance for Women and Girls. I'm a proud mother of 3 boys, and I'm a wife, and I just love and thrive in all my responsibilities in that way. Growing up, I had no ambition. My biggest dream for me was to be able to work, find money, put food on the table, and provide for my parents and my siblings. I grew up in a community called Katanga in Norton, which was a high-density suburb. And around that time, most of the girl child, I remember they were not allowed to go to school because then the parents used to say, why send a girl child to school when they are going to be married?
Norton during the 90s was a very small town. In fact, it was not yet a town by then. It had only 2 locations, Katanga and Ngoni, and the low-density suburbs. It was very, very small. In terms of schools, secondary schools, there were only 2, St. Eric and Vimbai.
It was not so easy. A lot of girls were eloping.
So you find a lot of girls around that time did not finish school. They didn't go all the way. Some at grade 7, you would hear she's pregnant or she's got a baby. At Form 2, a lot of our girls didn't go up to O level. It was actually, you would maybe have a party to find that your friend or one of yours has gone up to high school, or they've gone to O level or A level or something like that. It was something that you'd rejoice about.
Norton was an industrious town. Most of the fathers would have to go and work in the industry, or they would work as house help, like garden boys. So the economic situation was really bad. And because we were so far away from the capital city of Harare, what it meant is that if a parent had to choose between which children I send to school and which ones I don't, the girl child was always the last option. For me, I remember when I was around grade 7, I had to find a job where I started learning how to do braids, and then I would give that money to my mother to just also help with some of the house upkeep.
Things were not rosy, I can tell you that. So you would find, from a girl's perspective as well, most girls started eloping. Not the kind of European eloping you would see, you're going wherever, you're going because you want to be there, or you're running away because of love. They were running away mostly because of hunger.
And usually it was the 3rd term. You would get a lot of girls dropping out of school because they wanted to get married. And sometimes we had to do a lot of counseling to the girls to explain the importance of school, because then maybe from their backgrounds, from their homes, from their sisters, there were no clear role models.
I remember one particular incident where like a neighbor's daughter who was 3 doors away got pregnant when she was supposed to be like Form 2 or your 2nd year in high school. And the talk in the neighborhood was, you see, this person, why send your girl child to school? So I remember feeling so much anger and upset, even from a young age, around how come my chances of going to school are always questioned because I was a girl child. Little did I know at that point that this was one of the things that I was going to be obsessed with for life, to say, how can we ensure the opportunities are not taken away because of their gender?
So our house used to be like more than 2, maybe 3 kilometers from school, and definitely our parents didn't afford to get us like money for transport, so we had to walk. Being Vongai, she used to actually carry my bag to school, like when I was in grade 1.
Some of them would come from the surrounding farms to school And Vongai would walk all the way from near the hospital where they were living there on foot. They would walk to this school.
It was quite a distance. It was about 3 kilometers from my house to the school. And it was a very scary place because at that time, Norton was still rural. Every day, my siblings and I would wake up at 4 a.m. to just go to the field to do our portion for an hour before going to school. As the fourth born out of 5 siblings, I was given a smaller portion than my older siblings, but the expectation was to do something before you go to school. Going to my year 3, there was an NGO that started working with young girls in my community. So they came to my school to work and support our teachers. And prior to that, what had happened is that the weekend before they started working in my school, I had gone to a wedding with my cousins. And then because the dress I was wearing had a patch on it, one of my cousins laughed at me. I remember very well being an 8-year-old girl, these kids laughing at me, saying they cannot play with me. I felt so embarrassed. Up until that point, I didn't realize I was poor because I knew what I knew and I knew what my circumstances were. So when I went back to school the following day, my teacher said, "Vongai, you look so upset. What happened?" And then I told you what really happened. And at that day, there were NGOs who were working with my school. So my teacher used me as an example, to as they were talking with these NGOs, because they were trying to say, think of a child where something has happened. So from that time, they then identified me and I started getting dedicated support. They started telling me about menstrual health, about being cautious about my body. They started telling me that I was good enough through the work of the teachers. And for me, that became the beginnings of the shift in my whole trajectory. And for the first time in my life, I started believing that actually I could be someone. They helped me move from being another statistics of a teenage pregnant to where I became one of the most influential women on the continent of Africa and beyond.
Vongai, mwana akakura achiteerera, mwana akakura akazvininipisa kwandiri, aita zvandinenge ndamuti aite zvakanaka-naka.
She was a serious person. Not serious in a boring way, but she was, I think she was a focused person from a very, very early age. So I really wouldn't call her a funny person.
So I was, if I use today's language, they call them a teacher's pet. So I was a teacher's pet. I liked to please the teachers. I wanted them to make me feel that I was a good kid. To an extent, I think I had approval addiction because I liked it when my teachers liked me.
I remember that time, maybe if someone finished O-level, they started to become a teacher. But she always would push herself, like, I'll go to A-level. So because of her, I told her, I also want to go A-level. When she finished A-level, she said she'll go to university. So I remember even going to use that to just sit on a desk, telling her, like, one day I also go to university. So she was a great inspiration, like, in so many ways to my life.
Back in the 90s, you'd find that we were like one big happy family, despite the challenges. You'd find that the neighbor would be as good as your dad.
So if you do something good, the whole community will celebrate. If you do something bad,
they wouldn't let you fool around and leave you alone. That would never happen. If they found you in the streets messing up, they would even hit you from there. I never mind the fact that your father is at home or your mom is not there or whatever. They would deal with you. And you would come and tell your father that I've dealt with her because she was doing ABCD. That's how close-knit we were as a community.
My entrepreneurial skills continued at University of Zimbabwe. I studied psychology. My first degree was in psychology. And I remember that, for me to also be able to keep up to have an upkick, I would cook. And then I would cook for other students in my little hotel room. And then I would sell the food. I also started doing hairs, like people's hairs, especially girls, just to make sure that I had something to kind of live. And I had then my first former boyfriend that I never wanted my parents to know about. So I started testing my boundaries a bit more than I had done. But still, you would see me as the first one in the library and as the last one in the library. Because for me, I thought, you know what, I needed to push myself. I had resolved that, you know what, I know how I grew up and I wanted to change the narrative. I wanted to make a life for myself. I went back to my community to thank these organizations a few years ago for the work they had done. I was so dying to make sure they felt so proud of the byproducts of their work. And to my horror, they had closed down. And it wasn't just closing down because they did not want the work to continue. Some of the themes that came from how they closed down was they felt isolated, they had burnt out. There were various leadership and organizational issues that made this organization grow. My heart began troubled. And for a few years, I started doing scholarship for girls, but I was still troubled around how can we ensure that we can no longer have bridges crumble like that. So the final shock for me came when I went to Kenya, one of the Maasai communities, and I was talking to this lady who has done incredible work for rescuing young girls from sexual-based violence. She said, Vongai, when I started this 10 years ago, I did not want to become a CEO. I did not want to become a fundraiser. But now I have to do all these things and I'm exhausted. And I feel alone and I feel isolated. For me, that became that moment when I said, enough is enough. If we don't do anything to support these incredible human beings who are addressing various issues affecting women and girls on our continent, we will never achieve gender parity. And thinking about my own personal experience, I realized that I could not allow under my watch any other person or any of these bridges that had helped young girls like me cross over. And this is how I then started the Alliance for Women and Girls.
At the Alliance for Women and Girls, we are obsessed with supporting leaders and organizations that are gender-focused in Africa.
We do this through three various kind of priorities. So one area, we have different leadership initiatives that support founders, leaders, and everybody in the organizations. They range from fellowship, leadership trainings and programs, and everything else kind of in between. So we are obsessed with how do we ensure that there's leadership at all levels and the leaders are supported so that they are not isolated. The second bucket of work is what we call Mushandira Pamwe, or community building. So Mushandira Pamwe is a Zimbabwean word which means we want to work together, and it speaks again to the philosophy of Ubuntu. So what that does is we are a network of independent organizations. As I speak currently, we've got over 87 network partners spread across 17 countries on the continent. And these network partners are independently run organizations who are spearheading initiatives that address issues affecting women and girls, from issues around gender-based violence to issues around economic empowerment to issues around climate and everything else in between that just affects girls' ability to thrive for themselves. But the whole idea behind our work is that how do we ensure that one day the African child, the African woman will be able to live a life free from any violence and will be able to fend for themselves without any limitations. So the second bucket that I've spoken about around our community is we bring these network partners together, they learn from each other, we've got communities of practice, etc. As the Alliance, we always believe this saying that says, farmers do not grow crops, but farmers create an environment in which crops grow on. So as the Alliance for Women and Girls, we are obsessed with creating conditions in which this organization thrive in their leadership at all levels. The last priority area for us is what we call knowledge or resource sharing. Under that, we've got a portal that has got thousands of resources that our network partners can access to address any of the organizational or leadership challenges they are experiencing. They also find each other on the portal. We also put a couple of networking events and conferences that take place. One last thing that I would say there is that, yes, there are so many organizations that are focused on issues affecting women and girls, but the majority focus on how do we make sure there are more girls, in STEM, or how do we make sure teenage pregnancies reduces, etc., etc. Well, these are very important topics to think about. For us, our organization is talking about, but how do we come behind people that are spearheading this? And for us to receive or to achieve sustainable development goals around gender, unless and until we come fully behind these leaders, these organizations, we will never truly achieve gender parity on the continent of Africa.
Vongai has made three things very clear from the start. The vision for AFWAG, her unwillingness to compromise on excellence, and her orientation for education and continuous learning. She's a visionary leader who always has clear goals of where AFWAG is going. She's very involved in the work that we're doing at the Alliance for Women and Girls, but she also does not micromanage. She allows all of the different staff members to have autonomy over the work that they are doing, which allows us to also learn as we are working and feel the contributions that the impacts rather that we are having in the organization.
Working with Vongai has made me realize that I have other areas that I'm so excellent at. She has tapped onto my potential, unlocked my potential in different sectors different pillars that are not aligned to only fundraising and development. I've realized that there are a lot of things that I'm also capable of doing. So she has really stretched me to function in those different capacities, and I absolutely love it.
When I see Vongai today and the path that she has taken, who she has become now, I think a lot of us could have become better had there be a lot of maybe non-governmental organizations coming through for the girl child or being there to see us through.
My future goals include expanding the reach and impact of the Alliance for Women and Girls to ensure that no organization dedicated to women and girls has to close its doors due to organizational or leadership challenges. I aspire to create a world together with my team and others where every girl has the opportunity to achieve her dreams, and where the support structures necessary for their success are strong and sustainable.